a valley at the moment, heading towards Mount Hermon. Our aim is to go to Tel Dan. We're about 7 k's from Kiryat Shimona. Stephen's up again. So we have Mount Hermon up in front of us here.
Ship, was it?
Yeah, huge. The melting snows of Hermon go rushing by at Tel Dan. This water began its flight on Mount Hermon. It's now making its way down towards the Jordan via Galilee. And then by serpentine course comes into the Dead Sea, where it is sterile.
How long is
This is me pouring water from the spring of Dan over the head of our fearless leader.
Marion wet.
Yeah, well, see, that's come down from the melting snow. It's the melting snow of Hermon that you're standing in. Here's Marty. He's testing out the snow waters of Hermon.
Not too bad. It won't be any good for drinking down there now.
We're at the Tel Dan, and this is the so-called Israelite Gate, coming from the era of Judges chapter 17 and 18. Some of the diggings of the ancient Tel of Dan. This will be some sort of housing area here. Look how high this grass is here, Dave. This is the so-called cultic site in Dan, and probably goes right back to the original Canaanites who were here. And of course the tribe of Dan, who corrupted the truth and brought the apostasy of Micah to this place. Scripture often speaks of from Dan to Beersheba, and sometimes from Beersheba to Dan. Dan being the northern limit of the inheritance of Israel. And we are here at the Tel Dan. We've just walked through it and observed the old ruins that have been dug up, and we've now come to the point where we are standing beside the old altar and temple that was established here, probably originally goes right back to the Canaanite era, and of course the apostasy of Israel. In the record of Judges chapter 17 and 18 we have the beginnings of this place as far as Israel was concerned, because it was in Mount Ephraim that a man called Micah established a new religion in Israel, and he had for his priest none other than the grandson of Moses. The Jews, of course, have tried to hide that fact, but in Judges chapter 18 and verse 30 we read, "And the children of Dan set up the graven image, and Jonathan the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, he and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land." Some think that should read the captivity of the ark, because there's mention of Shiloh in the next verse. And they set up Micah's graven image, which he made all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh. So the apostasy began here when 5 men left the tribe of Dan, who were unable, though they were the largest tribe in numbers, 62,000 or so of them, they could not take their inheritance where they were given it near the land of the Philistines and to the west of Judah, and they were confined by the Canaanites and the Philistines to the heights of Zorah and Eshtaol. And they sent 5 men to spy out the north of the land. Those 5 men came to the house of Micah. They observed the new religion he had established, put it in their notebook, and they went on, and the record says that they came to this place. Then the 5 men departed and came to Laish, and saw the people that were therein, how they dwelt careless, after the manner of the Zidonians, quiet and secure. And there was no magistrate in the land that might put them to shame in anything. And they were far from the Zidonians, and had no business with any man. They went back and told their brethren, and 600 men of Dan, and presumably their families, made their way north here. They captured this place, they took it from the Canaanites, and they established this place as their inheritance in the land. But sadly, on their way up at Mount Ephraim, they brought Jonathan, the grandson of Moses, with them to be their priest. And so the false religion, the apostasy that had begun in the house of Micah in Mount Ephraim, was established here in Dan in the north. It was not to be the only one. In the record of the book of Kings, in 1 of Kings chapter 12, when Yahweh appointed Jeroboam to be king over the 10 northern tribes, when Ahijah the prophet took off his garment and rent it into 12 pieces, he gave 10 to Jeroboam. And of course we know the sad story that when he moved his capital and he came to Shechem, it says in verse 25 of 1 Kings 12, then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim. That was the home of the original apostasy of Micah. He built this place in Mount Ephraim and dwelt therein, and went out thence, and he built Peniel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up to sacrifice in the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of the people return unto their lord Rehoboam. He lost his confidence in God. He had all the potential of David, because in fact the promise that is made to Jeroboam is almost identical to David, but he did not have the faith nor the loyalty of David to Yahweh his God. He became politically inclined. He began to think about the possibilities of the people wanting to go to Jerusalem 3 times in a year as they were commanded, and what that would mean for his kingdom, for he would not go. So he decided to erect 2 golden calves. This was obviously patterned upon the golden calf, the young bull of Egypt, Apis, who represented Osiris, the Egyptian equivalent of Nimrod. In 2 Babylons, page 45, Hislop points that out. And so this was a serious matter. He may have had other ideas. He may have chosen the young bullock because, of course, the ox was the symbol for the tribe of Ephraim. It may have been a political decision. It turned out to be very much a religious decision. And so the apostasy of Jeroboam was established in two places. Bethel, the house of God, where we were a couple of days ago. That's, of course, where it all started with Jacob. And here in Dan. Dan means judgment. And the sad thing is that the record says this: whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. And this thing became a sin. For the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan, which was about 3 times as far for most of them. It's too hard for you to go up to Jerusalem. So he put 2 calves, one on the boundary at Bethel, close by to most of the 10 tribes, and the other way up here in the north in Dan. And guess where they came in multitudes? To Dan, to judgment. Isn't that so typical of human nature? Look, it's too hard for you to go to all these meetings. But put something on the other side of Australia, other side of the world, and people will go out of their way to get there if it's in accordance with their desire to serve the flesh and to fulfill their own will. That is so classically human nature. And what we have behind me is the evidence of what human nature does when it tampers with the things of God. We have here, as was pointed out to me, possibly the design based upon the temple and before that the tabernacle. You have a laver in the front of the altar. Then you have a holy place, and then you go up to the most holy place, so to speak. This is the home of apostasy. And moreover, its first mention in the Bible takes us into the future, because we've been following the path of Abraham. And we read in Genesis chapter 14 that he pursued Christadelphian to Dan. And we saw that Christadelphian means a handful of sheaves. We saw there were 3 valleys in Genesis chapter 14. And here we are at Dan, the place of judgment, a heap of sheaves in a valley for judgment. Let us hope that when our Lord returns, and it will be very soon, that there will be a people who have refused to turn away to apostasy of any kind, and will be in the company of Abraham when he pursues, as it were, the antitypical Abraham pursues the hosts of Gog to destroy them in this land, in the place of divine judgment. So the water we were paddling in, that would be spring water, and this is spring water, and it will join with the snow waters that's coming down from here. hands here. Stephen's driving for his first time on the right-hand side of the road, but he's in the middle of the road at the moment. I'm hoping that he might get over onto the right-hand side.
Got to think backwards.
He's got the bit between his teeth now. We're heading towards Mount Hermon. You'll actually see the Israeli post up on the top there. See the Israeli military post.
Right, yes, okay.
That'll come through on
In ancient times this place was called Panias, P-A-N-I-A-S, but because of the Arabic language they have very great difficulty saying B. So in fact it was now translated Banias, but it was Panias. Why Panias? Well, it was named after the god Pan, who was the god, the goat-like sort of god with the pan flutes, who used to run through the vegetation in the woods and with his flutes call all of the other gods to follow him. And so when we hear about the word in pandemonium, it's the idea of God Pan actually calling all the other gods to cause mischief in people's lives. And so this place, it has this historical connection with all of the Greek gods and the god Jupiter, and then to this place it was where the Jesus Christ sat down with his disciples and he says, who do you say that I am? And it was Peter who made the statement, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Christ was to turn around and say, on this statement, on the very essence of this statement, that God is a living God in our lives, will form the basis of the ecclesia. And we know that those words are repeated, aren't they, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, where God was first manifest in the flesh, then justified in the spirit, preached to angels, and then received up into glory. And on the basis that God would be part of our life, we would know how to behave ourselves in the ecclesia of God. And 3 times in the first epistle of Timothy there's this expression, the living God. And it was to this place here that Christ would say, yes, if you believe that God can touch your life, God can save you, God can change your life. And so this is a very interesting place.
So the water flows out of this bottom of the hill, does it?
So there's 4 head streams to the Jordan River. This is one of them.
Oh, okay. That's what I was asking you before.
Yeah.
So this is one
The
on Mount Hermon.
The Hispani in Lower Lebanon.
Yep.
The one at Tel Dan.
Right.
This one here, and there's one further one which I can't recall. I think
So the one at Tel
it
Dan.
might be the Sinai, the Sinai River. There's 4
Tel
heads
Dan
that-
primarily fed by
the snow
Mount
off the
Hermon.
back of Hermon, yeah. But all of it's really all the groundwater that's coming through limestone and all the stones and coming out here.
Yep.
And again, this just gurgles and bubbles out down in the ground here. And it is the picture of youth and vitality.
We're going to Macca's, spelled in Hebrew. the other end.
Marty, you show that for me.
Yeah, they've got very little space between the rear vision pillar and another camera.
What a big balloon. Did you see that?
Sweeping around from the direction where Bethsaida lies on the northeastern corner of the lake. Capernaum is just about 500 metres to the left. We're coming around now to the hills of Bashan called the Golan Heights, and there's a boat out on the lake. It is a little more windy than this afternoon, and so there's a little bit of wave action. We're in Nazareth and coming up to a huge mosque